redshirt rule gets approved for 6 games, it's currently 4 games, and Brevin stays healthy, would Will Mallory redshirt to start for 2 years?
I think that is a good question. I believe that it would be up for conversation, but I don't really see him. I mean, yeah, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. If Brevin stays healthy and leaves, so that means Will Mallory would only play those 6 games, redshirt this year, and then come back next year and start for 2. I wouldn't say 2 years after that, but I think the 6-game sample size he would have, plus a full year as a starter in 2021, would probably be enough for him to leave, based on the scenario that you gave. But I mean, that's actually not a bad theory. I don't know how it would work, but that's not a bad theory. I mean, there's a lot going on about this, especially because you got the 6-game rule that people are talking about that hasn't been approved. And you also have, you could play the whole 10, 11 games and it doesn't matter at all. I mean, it doesn't charge a year eligibility. So either way, you'll be fine. So, I mean, like you said, Mark, the people whose job it is to make these decisions don't even know about it just yet.
Sure, there's going to be certain attention given to the future, but you got to realize for these 3 conferences that are still aiming to play, man, they're just monitoring the health situation, testing status, all that, just to get a season completed, because we get hit every other day with 9 guys at Oklahoma, such and such number of guys here or there testing positive. And, oh, what would that mean if that happened during the season? And let's get through the college football season as it stands right now, because a lot of these things that are being, and understandably, I'm in favor of just about all of them I hear that make this a special case, and let's protect the athletes that are competing right now to protect their eligibility. And then we'll worry about the numbers and how that works. Do we have to expand past 105 on a roster, or 85 scholarships, or whatever? They'll figure that out. They'll work the metrics, the numbers, and obviously the finances, unfortunately, have to play into it as well. Or you would just say, well, we'll tack on 50 scholarships, but obviously those are pretty valuable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the Florida State folks are rather riled up today, and that's always becomes an interesting dynamic to read the comments back and forth from Florida State and Miami. I know that
to be funny for you as someone who watched both teams rise to the top and be dynamic, and it was a must-see game to whether it was the first game of the year, the third game of the year, or concluding the year,
it was.
You had to sit and watch it. I mean, and then you also had some rare occasions where it was a bowl game in the Orange Bowl back in 2004.
Yeah, rematch.
And how many guys you saw on the football field that you watched translate, maybe you watched, I don't know if you were really keen in the state of Florida high school ball, but you at least saw them from freshmen or the first time they took a snap in that game to the last time they took a snap in that game. And then all the guys who went on to be first-round draft picks. And then not only first-round draft pick, all the guys who went on to be Hall of Famers from that rivalry, from your landscape as not a Miami or Tallahassee guy, but you can admire from afar, like that game was it, and it hasn't been for a decade.
Yeah, I was a nerd growing up that, man, and I didn't spend all my time inside, that's for sure, man. I played athletics. I played on the high school baseball team. I played high school football. So I was doing all that too. I love to be outside, but man, I don't know where I found all the time. But man, I was the guy, the kid that had all sorts of athlons and Lindy's stacked up and reading and memorizing every little statistic. And so Florida State, Miami would hit the field, and I knew the starting lineups. I knew everybody out, and I didn't care who won the game. It was just sheer enjoyment of watching 2 of the very best programs and teams in the nation. And one of the big disappointments was, I still remember the 88 game. I think Florida State was number 1. This was game 1 or 2.
Yeah, after we won the 87 national championship. Yeah.
And Deion was still, this was his senior year at Florida State. After then it became the greatest, probably top 5 NFL draft ever. Derek Thomas, Troy Aikman, Deion, etc. Barry Sanders. Anyway, I couldn't believe as talented, fast, explosive Florida State was. Again, Deion Sanders, and then we could go on from there. Miami was that much better that night. 31-zip, I believe, was the final score. And I thought we were going to see, 31-28 down to the final kick or something like that, but which we did in later years, of course. But that night, man, Miami just was on they were like an NFL team out there.
You don't come to the crib creating a rap after we just won the national championship and the AP poll put you ahead of us after we just, oh, yeah. It was too much energy. And look at me talking like I was there. My study of the program and, of course, the U documentary and the U part 2. But at that time, it was just the U documentary that came out in 2011. Man, the guys who talked about how, like they were smelling salt, man. It was just like they couldn't wait to get on the field, how disrespected they felt. And I don't know who Bobby Bowden knows, but they always got a little bit more love than they deserved sometimes. And just, I don't know. I don't understand ESPN's affinity with that program. I understand their hate towards us. I do understand it, and we embrace it, and it's okay. But I guess they're just the antithesis of us, and that's why they love them so much more than they love them even more than they hate us. And if it was ever between us and them, they would always pick them.
When Miami played for the national championship against Nebraska in 1983, if for anybody who was paying attention, this had been coming since about 79. Jim Kelly was the quarterback. They were really good, but people that were on the fringe didn't really pay attention because you were still locked into everything was Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, etc. You didn't see that Miami was coming. But by 83, obviously, they had arrived, and they just brought a whole new dimension of football to the game. It was fascinating to watch Nebraska's power, Miami's speed, and it was an all-time classic. But it would be like, people don't realize it now, it would be like I'm trying to pick out a program that would play for a national championship this year. It would be like, I guess it would be like UCF playing for a national championship. It was like almost looked at like that, like Miami's playing, why are they in this game, and where did this come from? And it was kind of thought of because you saw the same, and it was the same. The same thing was happening, even though they didn't get there as soon, with Florida State at the same time. Florida State, Bobby Bowden knew that he needed to start scheduling, and they went on death marches. And they were both independents at the time, so they could schedule whoever they want. But Florida State for a few years went on death marches, and when I say that, I mean they were going to Notre Dame, Nebraska, Ohio State 3 consecutive weeks. They were like playing anybody they could, and nobody would go there and play. All those schools were too uppity. We're not going to Florida. Who's Florida State? We're not going there and playing. And then Florida State would go up there and kick their tail, and it was like, where did this program come from as well? I remember them playing Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl in '79. It was like, how did Florida State get to the Orange Bowl? Where did this come from? So they both arrived. They both started keeping all that Florida talent, and they both arrived at the same time. Miami obviously put a capper on it, and then they just, you could argue, dominated college football for the next 12 to 14 years.
And that's what I'm saying as far as how far it's fallen off now, to where we're like a noon Saturday game on ESPN2 or a 3:30 game on ABC, where it's like a filler game before the primetime game. The last time that it was a huge gradual buildup and you had a lot of NFL guys all on the same field at the same time, probably would say back in, it was back-to-back years, 13 and 14. And they came out on top both years, but you had, in 13, it was 2 undefeated teams. Number 2 versus number 7. And I was at the Wake Forest game the week before. Well, we had a bye week, so it was 2 weeks before. And it was a 1-score game down to the wire. We were 6-0 against Wake Forest, who was like 3-3 at that time. But they were one of those, it's just like, a Georgia Tech or one of those teams to where every 4 years they have a whole bunch of seniors, a well-coached team that's been in this program for a while, huge senior leadership, and they give a really good team a run for their money, and you got to show and play your best game. And that's what happened with Miami versus Wake Forest. But then 2 weeks later, we went up to Tallahassee. ABC game day was there. I mean, you had Duke Johnson, you had Denzel Perryman, you had Anthony Chickalo for Miami. Stephen Morris thrown on a slightly torn Achilles against that Winston guy and that future national championship team that won that year. Then the next year they came down to Miami. We were up 26-3 and ended up losing that game. With a freshman Brad Kaya, Clyde Wofford on a skinny post, breaks for 45 yards. Oh my goodness. I think about it all. Mark, if we could win that game, I think the trajectory of the program is different in 14. Even though we went on to be 6-6 and they went on to be a playoff team and got shellacked by Oregon, which was my second favorite game of all time. Whenever I'm having a bad day, I watch that game. It makes me feel really good. I mean, it just kept scoring and kept scoring and kept scoring, and it was.
I enjoyed that year too. Just the playoff in general that year.
I bet you did.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
I mean, that Ohio State team. Oh my goodness! Now, one of the most saddening things was not seeing that team go to the playoffs again the next year. And I think they would have been in a great mix that next year because they were overly talented. Because I think almost the whole team came back, But
they were pretty much sophomores.
Exactly. And you look back years from then, especially if you just talk O-line, D-line. Oh my